Francisco Silva had been cleaning the Valdebebas training facility for Real Madrid for 8 years when Ronaldo first noticed him, not because of anything dramatic or unusual, but because of the quiet precision with which he approached his work, arriving every morning at 5:30 to prepare the facilities before the players arrived, staying late to ensure everything was perfect for the next day's training, and maintaining a level of pride in his responsibilities that seemed to go far beyond what his modest salary would have justified. And over the months that followed, Ronaldo began to pay attention to the small details that revealed Francisco's character. The way he always had a kind word for younger staff members, the careful attention he paid to maintaining equipment that wasn't technically his responsibility, and the business ideas he would quietly discuss with other maintenance workers during breaks, ideas that demonstrated a sharp understanding of facility management and operational efficiency that seemed wasted on someone whose talents were being utilized only for cleaning and basic maintenance tasks. Francisco was 52 years old and had been working as a janitor for most of his adult life, not because he lacked ambition or intelligence, but because economic circumstances and limited educational opportunities had channeled his considerable abilities into work that paid the bills but didn't challenge his mind or utilize his natural gift for seeing how systems could be improved, how workflows could be optimized, and how small changes in facility management could result in significant improvements in efficiency and cost savings that would benefit everyone involved. And though he had submitted several written proposals to facility management over the years, suggesting improvements that could save the club money while improving working conditions, his suggestions had been ignored or dismissed because they came from someone whose job title didn't include strategic thinking or operational planning. The conversation that changed everything began on a Tuesday morning in March when Ronaldo arrived early for individual training and found Francisco in the equipment room, not cleaning but carefully organizing medical supplies and training gear with a systematic approach that immediately caught Ronaldo's attention. And when he asked Francisco about his organizational system, what started as a casual question evolved into a detailed discussion about inventory management, supply chain optimization, and facility efficiency that revealed a depth of knowledge and strategic thinking that seemed completely disconnected from Francisco's official job responsibilities, but perfectly aligned with the kind of business acumen that successful organizations desperately needed, but often failed to recognize when it came from unexpected sources. "I've been thinking about this place for 8 years, Francisco explained, with the enthusiasm of someone who rarely had the opportunity to discuss ideas that genuinely excited him. Watching how things work, seeing where time gets wasted, where money gets spent unnecessarily, where small changes could make big differences. And I've got notebooks full of ideas for improvements that could save the club thousands of euros every month, while making life easier for everyone who works here. But nobody asks janitors for business advice, even when the janitors understand the daily operations better than the people making decisions from offices where they never see what actually happens on the ground." Ronaldo found himself fascinated not just by Francisco's ideas, but by the methodical way he had analyzed every aspect of the facility's operations, from energy usage patterns that could be optimized to reduce utility costs, to equipment maintenance schedules that could be adjusted to extend the life of expensive training machinery, to supply ordering systems that could be streamlined to reduce waste and ensure that necessary materials were always available when needed. And as Francisco continued explaining his observations and recommendations, Ronaldo realized he was listening to someone who possessed exactly the kind of practical business intelligence that could be invaluable in managing the commercial ventures and charitable projects that were becoming increasingly important parts of his post-football planning. The partnership that emerged from their conversations was unprecedented in professional football, a formal business relationship between a global superstar and a maintenance worker that recognized Francisco's abilities rather than his job title. And when Ronaldo proposed that Francisco become his partner in developing a new sports facility management company, that could implement the efficiency improvements and cost-saving measures that Francisco had been developing for years. The janitor, who had spent decades being overlooked and undervalued, suddenly found himself positioned as a business leader whose expertise was not just acknowledged but actively sought after by someone whose success had taught him to recognize talent, regardless of where it came from or how it was currently being utilized. The legal documents that formalized their partnership were complex, not because the business arrangement was complicated, but because nobody had precedents for structuring equal partnerships between celebrities and working-class employees. And Ronaldo's lawyers initially struggled to understand why he wanted to give significant equity stakes and decision-making authority to someone whose resume consisted entirely of janitorial work. But when they sat down with Francisco and heard his presentations about facility optimization and operational efficiency, they began to understand that this partnership was based on complementary skills rather than charity. That Francisco brought to the table exactly the kind of practical knowledge that would be essential for success in an industry where operational excellence often determined profitability more than marketing or celebrity endorsements. The first project for Silva Ronaldo Facility Management was a comprehensive overhaul of operations at Ronaldo Training Facility, where Francisco implemented the efficiency improvements he had been developing for years, resulting in 30% reductions in energy costs, 25% improvements in equipment lifespan, and significant improvements in staff productivity that came from working in an environment where systems were designed for efficiency rather than convenience. And the success of this initial project generated interest from other sports organizations who wanted to understand how a janitor's insights had produced such dramatic improvements in facility performance and cost management. Francisco's transformation from janitor to business executive was remarkable, not just because of the change in his circumstances, but because of how naturally he adapted to his new responsibilities. His years of observing operations from the ground level having given him insights into business management that many MBA graduates lacked, and his ability to communicate with staff at all levels, from maintenance workers to senior executives, made him uniquely effective at implementing changes that might have faced resistance if they had been imposed by outside consultants who didn't understand the human dynamics that determined whether organizational improvements would be accepted or sabotaged by the people responsible for implementing them. The success of their facility management company led to expansion opportunities across Europe and eventually to other continents, with sports organizations, schools, and corporate clients seeking out their services because word had spread about the remarkable results that could be achieved when practical experience was combined with business resources, and when operational improvements were developed by people who understood daily workflows rather than theoretical models. And Francisco found himself traveling internationally as a sought-after consultant, whose expertise was valued precisely because it came from years of hands-on experience rather than academic training or management theory that often failed to account for real-world complexities. The personal friendship that developed between Ronaldo and Francisco extended far beyond their business relationship, with Francisco becoming one of Ronaldo's most trusted advisors, not just on business matters, but on personal decisions that required the kind of grounded perspective that came from someone who had lived through economic struggles and understood the value of stability, hard work, and treating all people with respect, regardless of their social status or professional positions. And Ronaldo often said that Francisco had taught him more about business management than any of the expensive consultants he had hired over the years, because Francisco's advice was based on practical experience rather than theoretical frameworks that sounded impressive but often failed when applied to real-world situations. The ripple effects of their partnership extended throughout the sports industry as other organizations began to recognize that valuable insights and business intelligence often existed among their own staff members, who had been overlooked because their job titles didn't suggest strategic thinking capabilities. And several major football clubs implemented programs to identify and develop business ideas from employees at all levels, discovering that some of their most innovative and cost-effective improvements came from people who had been dismissed as unskilled workers, but who actually possessed deep understanding of operational challenges and opportunities that were invisible to executives who made decisions from boardrooms rather than factory floors or training facilities. Francisco's success story became a case study in business schools and management programs as an example of how talent and intelligence exist at all levels of organizations, but are often wasted because hiring and promotion practices focus on credentials rather than capabilities, and how some of the most valuable business insights come from people who have been doing the actual work long enough to understand systems and processes in ways that are impossible to learn from textbooks or brief consulting assignments that provide superficial understanding rather than the deep knowledge that comes from years of daily involvement with operational realities. The charitable foundation that Francisco established, with his share of the profits, focused on providing business training and educational opportunities for working-class adults who had valuable skills and ideas but lacked the formal credentials or networking connections necessary to advance their careers. And the program's success demonstrated that intelligence and business acumen were much more widely distributed than traditional hiring practices suggested, proving that organizations could discover exceptional talent by looking beyond conventional sources and recognizing that some of their most valuable employees might already be working for them in positions that didn't utilize their full potential or acknowledge their strategic thinking capabilities. Years later, when Silva Ronaldo Facility Management had become one of Europe's most successful sports facility consulting firms, when Francisco had been featured on magazine covers as an example of entrepreneurial success and innovative thinking, when their partnership had inspired dozens of similar collaborations between celebrities and working-class employees who possessed complementary skills, Ronaldo would reflect that recognizing Francisco's potential had been one of the best business decisions of his career. Not just because of the financial returns, but because it had taught him that true partnership required looking beyond surface appearances to identify the qualities that really mattered for success, which were intelligence, integrity, work ethic, and genuine expertise, rather than impressive titles, expensive educations, or social connections that might look good on paper, but didn't necessarily translate into practical ability to solve problems and create value in competitive business environments. The lesson that emerged from their partnership was that success often came from unexpected combinations of resources and capabilities, that some of the most innovative business solutions were developed by people who had been ignored by traditional hiring practices, and that true leadership involved recognizing talent wherever it existed, rather than limiting partnerships to people who looked like conventional business partners, proving that diversity of experience and perspective often generated better results than homogeneous teams of people with similar backgrounds and conventional qualifications who brought impressive credentials but limited understanding of the operational realities that determined whether theoretical strategies would actually work when implemented in complex real-world environments, where success depended more on practical knowledge than academic theory.